Hey everybody, welcome to My Counselor Live. I'm Tori and I am here today with one of our amazing counselors in the MCO team. This is Carrie McCormick, and Carrie and I are just going to be able to sit down for the next hour, really interact with you guys and answer some of your questions, talk through some of what she's written, and just really gain a lot of insight from her and the things that she specializes in. So Carrie, I would love for you to just take a minute, introduce yourself to our viewers, tell them a little bit about you, who you are, who you work with.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Carrie McCormick. I am based in Nashville, Tennessee. Have a physical office here, so I get to see people. I can see people in person or online. I have been with MCO for about 6 months now. So. Practicing a little over 2 years, and just loving what I do, loving just all the wealth of knowledge that's out there that I just get to grow in and help people in. I am just coming back from a maternity leave. I had a perfect little baby girl, and so I obviously love being a mom too. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so it's fun. Having
Two
sisters.
girls, so much
Yeah.
fun. I'm sure there are no shortages of princess things
Oh my
and
goodness.
all of that.
Pink everywhere. Yeah. Total girl house.
Yes. Oh, I love it. That's so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
Sweet. Yes. Okay. Well, then tell me, so you've been practicing for about 2 years. So what are you kind of specializing in? What are the clients you're typically working with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I see a lot of individuals just struggling with anxiety, depression, relationship issues, whether it's, a marriage or a coworker or just, someone in their family, friend. I like helping people navigate difficult relationships, people just struggling with personal, emotional, issues that are hard to get past and feeling stuck. And um, I work with couples as well, helping couples, communicate on a level where they can just feel secure and safe with each other and, grow and develop a safe, fulfilling relationship. Um, so yeah, those are a lot of what I see now. And always learning, growing. My clients teach me things, as I sit with them, and just everybody's different. And so I'm always just learning from the people that I sit with.
Right. Yeah. Well, Carrie, I am so happy that you're on this team. And I think that there is just so much compassion and gentleness that you bring to the table for people. And so I just think that that is so special. And you kind of touched on it, but a lot of the individuals that you work with are struggling through things like anxiety, things like depression, all of that. And one of your articles that you just recently wrote is called Anxiety, How It Steals Us from the Present Moment, What It Costs Us, and How to Recognize It. So this is a pretty recent article that you wrote, and we're going to get to just chat through it today. So I'm excited to talk about it as someone who has struggled with a generalized anxiety disorder and knows a lot of people who have also struggled through that and are struggling through that. I think that this is a really great topic that we get to cover today, especially with you, someone who is a professional counselor and does have just expertise around this. So I just want to start by asking, who did you write this article for and what inspired you to write it?
Well, like you said, you have struggled with this, people, we all know. I have. It's such a common issue. It's huge, really huge.
Right. I mean, especially in the world that we're living in right now. I mean, there's just so
Really,
much that can cause anxiety in our hearts, in our spirits, in our bodies.
hmm Right. And so I feel like we can't say enough about it. And I just want to normalize it to everybody, to the general person out there, the average person, someone who may be really familiar with it, someone who may struggle with it and not know that they do, and just get get familiar with it, understand themselves, and know that there's hope.
Yeah. And I think that normalizing is super important, not just for people that don't have an understanding of anxiety, but for people who are struggling through it.
Mhm.
And where the conversation doesn't feel like it's normalized, where it feels kind of heavy and intense and they can't talk about it and they end up, burying it all inside. So I
Mhm.
love that that is your heart behind this, is normalizing the conversation and really just opening up that door to talk about this. So my next question would just be, so you kind of talk about this a little bit, but is there technically a difference between stress and anxiety? And what is that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really great question because a lot of the time we can use those terms
Totally.
interchangeably,
Yeah.
and there is a difference. Stress would be kind of like I had my outside world and circumstances are requiring more of me than I actually have inside to meet them, right? Like, for example, if you're a student and say you have 10, exams coming up next week, I mean, that would be stressful because you only have so many hours of the day and so much brain power. And so you're really stretched to the max to meet that demand, that circumstance. It could be a mom that has, a single mom of 3 or 4 kids, and she only has 2 hands, and 2 feet to, do things with. And so there's just more on the outside than what, she has to meet that demand. And so that can be stress.
Mhm.
Anxiety is a little different in the sense that this is kind of something that we're dealing with internally,
Mhm.
and how we're interpreting the world outside of us and processing that internally, and it can manifest in different ways, and it can be kind of on a spectrum. We can have mild kind of general anxiety, or it can be show up in phobias, and kind of see things that, are really scary, specific things that are really scary. And so that would be the difference. The two.
Yeah. Right. So, in that contrast between stress and anxiety, what are kind of the signs that someone might be feeling anxious instead of just stressed?
Yeah. Good question. Well, so let's put this in 2 categories. If you think about how do I know if I'm anxious? It can show up in your mental life. You can have ruminating thoughts. You can have thoughts that just keep turning over and over again, and you can't quite resolve what's happening in your mind. You can have catastrophizing thoughts, like the worst of the worst is going to happen, and that keeps playing over and over again in your mind. If you go down, if you think about, your body and your body responding kind of to, what it's trying to work out internally. You could have your hands could be shaky, or sweaty palms, or your heart could kind of start beating fast, or you can have gastrointestinal issues. You could have, that's maybe on a milder end, or could always go to, I should say, also go to, more extreme into a panic attack, where you feel like you're having a heart attack, or you feel like you're going to die. You feel like it's a medical emergency, and it turns out to be it's anxiety.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's so hard, it is really difficult when you get into that place, whether it be a panic attack or you're having those physical responses to anxiety, to remove yourself so that you can practice that mindfulness. And that's something that you talk about, is just the importance of kind of removing yourself. But how do you do that? If you're in the midst of feeling this stress, of feeling that rising panic attack coming, how do you remove yourself practically from that in order to be mindful and to kind of bring yourself back down?
Sure. Well, I think the first step, which kind of was the purpose of this article, is to realize, just normalize it. Get familiar with it. Um, kind of have some kind of sense of knowing, hey, maybe I'm feeling anxious about something right now. So in that place, once you get to that place, then saying, that's okay. I'm feeling anxious about something right now. And allowing yourself just to notice it. Sometimes we want to fight against it and kind of freak out and think, oh my gosh, I'm losing control of my mind. I'm losing control of my body. And that is a scary place to be. And definitely don't want to, minimize how and lessen how hard it is to get out of that spot, if it gets to that point. But you really just want to be able to say, okay, this is happening. I'm feeling this way right now. I'm just going to notice it. I'm going to notice what's going on in my thoughts. Kind of think about what I'm thinking about, and just stop. And I know I talked about kind of being able to bring yourself back into the present. And a lot of the time, just breathing can help you do that. If you are really focusing on taking like a really intentional deep breath over and over again, that process in your body just kind of automatically halts. Um, this kind of anxiety snowball that can happen. Mm-hmm. And so you just want to be able to purposefully breathe. We talk about this being grounding techniques, but to use your senses, look at what's around you, what colors are around you, touch something. What are you sitting on? What do your hands feel? That can kind of take you out of that tailspin and bring you right back to where you are and bring calm and allow you to just kind of have that break.
Yeah, so good. And I mean, you kind of just touched on this, but just letting your body communicate to you, right? Like tuning into your body is how you say it in your article. Yeah. So, I mean, what are some ways maybe that like your body communicates with you? So obviously you mentioned like gastrointestinal issues, things like that. What are some ways that your body is communicating with you in a way that you can kind of pick up on?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I sit with people, it shows up different in everybody. Some people feel, like a tightness in their chest. And that would be something to pay attention to. And even knowing that, if my body's feeling this way, it could be telling me something. Some people might have a stomach ache. Some people might, get headaches, vertigo, feel a little bit of dizziness. And so when you notice these things, it doesn't have to be that this is just an isolated kind of, random happening. Mm-hmm. And so really allow yourself to pay attention to, man, I'm feeling this way. If you show up, in a crowd of people and all of a sudden, you start feeling short of breath, pay attention to that. Your body could be reacting to what you're trying to work out internally, but don't quite have the resource or the language to know, what's going on inside of you.
Yeah. It's crazy how much everything connects. I even think about conversations I've had with counselors where they say, your emotions are indicators, right? So you can be, feeling something emotionally that is trying to indicate something to you. And then sometimes it's like your emotions get so strong that your physical body starts to communicate with you too. And so then it's like so much happening. And then it's like, no wonder we get into this place that we feel like so debilitated, like we can't move because there's just so much communicating happening. And sometimes we just try and like shove it aside and don't want to think about it, don't want to focus on it. And it makes it so much worse.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And you mentioned in your article that anxiety can work, I believe you said for you or against you. And I wanted to just have you expand on that a little bit. What does that mean? How could anxiety possibly work for us?
Well, kind of like you just said, when we kind of go into this place where we work really hard to not feel what we're feeling and work really hard to um, kind of put a lid on it and keep things from kind of tail spinning. Like you said, it can kind of make it worse,
Yeah.
and that's working against us. It's not helping us. And when we are able to just kind of approach ourselves non-judgmentally, and notice, and just it is what it is kind of way. This is not good or bad. It just is. And, have that kind of accepting stance toward ourselves. Then we open the door to beginning to understand what's going on, and getting to the root of what is causing this. Anxiety is like a symptom. It's not the end of the road. It's kind of an indicator pointing to something that's going on in a deeper place. And so when we just um, allow ourselves to entertain that and be aware of that, then we can begin to work on it and allow ourselves to function in the way that we really want to, in wherever anxiety shows up for us.
Yeah. Oh, so true. And you mentioned a few other ways to maybe manage that anxiety. And one of them, of course, is not isolating yourself, is letting safe people into that space with you. So I guess this is kind of like a practical question, but what is a safe person? Like
Yeah.
who kind of classifies as a safe person? Because
Uh-huh.
obviously you don't want to just like be panicking and then just reach out to some acquaintance, right? So
Uh-huh.
what would kind of qualify as that?
Yeah, well, certainly, somebody that, that knows you well, somebody that you um, can kind of say, man, I am feeling right now like, um, my heart is going to jump out of my chest.
Mm.
And that person might, I would say a not safe response would be, oh, nothing's wrong with you. You know, nothing's wrong, you're fine, kind of move on, or gosh, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You don't have a reason to feel that way. Um, a more of a safe response would be, oh, really? Gosh, that sounds awful. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Someone that validates it, right? Like
mhm.
that really validates what you're feeling, but doesn't necessarily let you stay stuck in that place.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then someone is not going to judge you, It's not going to say that you shouldn't feel that way or there's no reason to feel that way. Or, um, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little example of safe and not safe.
Yeah. And you are obviously a safe person, going to a counselor and talking with them. And that's my last question really is for you. What would you say as a counselor, as someone who has worked with a lot of people who have struggled through anxiety? What's a word of encouragement that you would give to someone watching right now who is struggling through that?
Yeah. Well, obviously there is help. You're not alone. Um, so many people, and I think we're talking about it a lot more, and more people are willing to say, I'm struggling with this. And, um, but yeah, there's so much, I should say, knowledge about what causes. There's so much help. There is, especially when you seek, counseling, someone like me can walk with you through your story and kind of go places that you may not have thought of, that could be, contributing to what you're feeling. And so I would just encourage you to do that. Really, give yourself the chance to, get to know you more in that way, um, and
That's
experience
beautiful.
some healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who has struggled through anxiety, I mean, hearing what you just said is so perfect, right? That's like exactly what like my heart needs to hear sometimes. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, hopefully this is able to encourage some people. I love your heart, Carrie, and just the heart behind this article of writing it. really trying to normalize that conversation and talk about it. And of course, to the people watching, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're experiencing this kind of struggle and really, I mean, pain, I mean, it really is a pain, right? And so if you're experiencing that, we want to come alongside you and help you. So if maybe something Carrie said resonated, you are welcome to check her out, maybe book a session with her and talk more with her or someone else on our team. So definitely don't stay quiet and kind of out of it. Definitely it's important to come and fight it and have people fighting with you. So we're going to kind of go into our next sort of topic. Which is our trending topics, right? So every episode we come together and we kind of see what's trending, what people are talking about in Google and all of that stuff. And one of the things that a lot of people have been talking about is CBD, which is something that I feel like relates to anxiety. I think a lot of people seek out CBD for the purpose of treating their anxiety, their stress, trying to calm down, go to sleep, whatever it may be. And it's really become, I feel like, a lot bigger in the past year. And maybe that's just the pandemic and people really seeking out more ways to manage stress. But really, it's become a lot bigger this past year. So first question is just, okay, like, what is CBD?
Yeah. Well, this is a treatment. People use it for a variety of issues, but it's derived from this cannabis plant. Mm-hmm. It has several hundred chemical compounds in it that are used to kind of, interact with your brain to, bring some relief in different, areas that people are looking for. So that's what it is, and it's kind of, I should say, used in different formats. I think there's liquid format.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's so funny. This year it's been everywhere, right? So I think I used to see it in, like oils and things like that. And now I'm seeing it in like skincare products and all of these different things. And it really is just this big thing. My dog has treats that have CBD in them, CBD dog treats that can calm her down when she gets stressed. And it's like this, I feel like this stuff wasn't around 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, so you could compare its the usage of it to marijuana, but it doesn't have the same side effects and isn't known to be harmful to your body.
Right. And I think that that's a main concern that I have heard from people is, oh my gosh, like CBD, that's like an illegal drug. That's not okay. Like marijuana, all of that. But in reality, it's derived from the same plant, but it doesn't have those harmful effects on your body.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And, I obviously struggle with anxiety. And so, my products that I have that do have CBD in them, they are kind of relaxing, but not in a way that takes me out of my mind, right? Like takes me out of my body into a different experience. Like it still, allows me to be present and where I'm at, but just not quite as high stress as I could be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's so funny. I feel like there is a lot of value in, plants and very derived from plants and derived from those things kind of treatments, especially something like that, that doesn't have all of the nasty things that, would be harmful for your body. It's actually good.
Yeah, a naturally derived kind of treatment.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. And obviously, guys, if you're watching this and you have any questions, feel free to, put them in the comments. But yeah, I think that it is definitely an interesting, I don't want to say a fad, but kind of. I mean, I feel like it has become a lot bigger in the past year than it ever has been.
Yeah. It has been interesting to see it kind of blow up in that way. And that would be, I think, just one word of caution. If you're using it to, to treat yourself, to treat anxiety, then, kind of understanding that it's not regulated, and so you may not know, kind of what dosage or what format, or and those things might be important for you to know. Hey, is this really helpful for me or not? And so yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's important to speak to a professional, speak to your doctor, before you just kind of take matters into your own hands and order a bunch of like CBD products that really might actually be doing more harm to you than good. Yeah,
Right.
definitely an important conversation to have with your doctor.
Mhm.
Obviously, like we're just talking back and forth about what it is and what it could be used for, but don't take what we're saying as like, oh, now I got to go do it. Definitely talk with someone, figure out if that's for you, because your journey might look a little bit different.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, we're going to kind of jump into our last segment for the next half hour, just about other people's questions, talk through what other people have been asking. So these are questions that you guys, the viewers, have sent in to us. So these questions come from Facebook Messenger, our comments, MyCounselor.Online/ask. And you guys are welcome to submit those at any time, and we'll always answer them in a future episode. So we're going to jump into our first question, which was asked online, and says, I feel like I am trapped in my past and need guidance and steps to heal. It's obviously kind of a broad question, trapped in your past, but I guess as a counselor, Carrie, what would you recommend to this person who feels trapped and needs guidance?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say, how awful that must be, to feel like you cannot move forward and in your life. And I would imagine that your life might feel limited in a lot of ways. You feel trapped in some sense. And so, there was a trend a while ago, and not so long ago, but this kind of self-help trend of, and people still are, and self-help books are great, and I think they offer a lot of resource and information, but for real kind of full and deep healing, it's really impossible to kind of help ourselves, in a sense. And so I would encourage that, you would find a professional who can walk with you through that past. Because I wouldn't encourage you to do that alone. You really need someone that can go there with you, who has understanding and insight, and who cares. And then alongside that, to surround yourself with supportive people, a supportive community that can encourage you in your growth and in your healing. I really stand firm on, the belief that we really just can't do life alone. Can't go through things alone. And how we overcome and get past things is just with others, is with safe, people that can help us grow. And I don't underestimate, obviously, because this is what I do for a living, but the power of just having someone, skilled to go with you into those places.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think there's a misconception around counseling that you have to be in like a certain place in a certain season in order to need counseling, or in order to go to counseling and kind of have a valid reason. But I think this question is just like perfect reason, and we all have things in our past, trauma that we've experienced, grief that we've walked through, that's so important to sit down and talk through, whether it be with a family or friend or with a counselor. And so I think that that's like a misconception a lot of people have. And, they asked, what are some steps to heal? I mean, truthfully, like I would say, go to counseling, like go and talk about it and like figure out, the triggers that you're having, and, the trauma that you might not have even realized you experienced.
For sure. Yeah. Well put.
Amazing. Awesome. And we have, of course, amazing counselors like you, Carrie, who are on our team and ready to talk with you. So thank you so much for sending in this question. We appreciate it. And hopefully this is able to kind of encourage you and maybe give you some tips on steps to take. So we're going to jump into this next question. And it's kind of long, so I'm going to kind of read it for you. But they said, I've been suffering from anxiety and panic attacks for 13 years now. It's manageable in the morning, but usually interrupts my sleep. It happens at night, waking me up multiple times, experiencing shortness of breath, palpitation, stiffness of my jaw, shoulders, and neck. Would like to know what kind of therapy or treatment would be best for me.
Wow, well, 13 years, such a long time to suffer. My heart just breaks hearing that. Such a long time for your sleep to be interrupted, sleep being so important. And and of course you would want to, seek help, know what to do.
That's so hard. I can't imagine too, like, of course, I have experienced some things, but for 13 years to be woken up in the middle of the night feeling that kind of bodily like reaction. I mean, that is just so intense on your body and on your mind and your spirit.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, I kind of have a similar answer. I would go find, well, first of all, it's there is always a place to go to your primary care doctor, and determine if there's any physical issues going on, physiological issues that are contributing to that. And I think that's always a good idea to kind of cancel out and see if that's something contributing to that issue.
Right. I even think of if you need immediate, results or immediate, help, you needed to be on medication for a time. Like if that would help you to sleep, and that's not bad, right? Like we need sleep.
Exactly.
Like there are things that we need, basic human functions that if we don't have, like we're not a great person.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's, so much help with medication. It can be, something to just kind of get you to a place where, you can then deal with whatever is the deeper issue going on, causing that. I would definitely kind of like I talked about in the article, some of these grounding techniques can be helpful, just kind of immediate practices to do when you're in the moment. And
yeah, so what would you suggest, I guess, specifically for grounding in the moment, in the middle of the night, waking up with shortness of breath and all of these things?
right, yeah. So focusing on the breathing, the deep breathing practice. Sometimes, a meditation kind of practice, and I don't mean in a sense like a mindless kind of Buddhist meditation ordeal there. I mean more of a intentional kind of focusing your mind on something that is soothing, that's life-giving, that may counter, if there's fear thoughts there, or panic thoughts, or something that may really just counter that for you.
Yeah, I don't know if you talk, I mean, I think one thing that has been helpful for me and my struggles that I've had with anxiety has been grounding in a way that's like, okay, like what's around me? Like what color are the walls? What does this feel like? Using my senses. I know that that's a huge one for a lot of people. It's just like really interacting with your senses. So like, obviously you've got your senses. And so I'm like, what am I smelling? What does this feel like? What does this taste like? Things that really remind me that I'm still in control of my body.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so that can be helpful to just kind of get yourself through the night. And then during the day, it may feel like, oh, I'm okay now. I got through the night. I managed my day okay. But that can be kind of tricky and deceiving because naturally, these kind of filters and defenses that we use to get through life come up to help us to get through the day. But then when we go to sleep at night, sometimes they come down, and that's when our, more vulnerable kind of beliefs and what's inside can show up.
For sure.
And
That's like the
so,
tossing and turning, right? That people
yeah,
experience,
yeah,
they're fine all day and then they get to the night and like it's like all the distractions are gone and you're
mhm,
actually faced with your fears or stresses or whatever.
right. So getting to talk about those things during the day, and that way um, you can work through, go through a process of working through a lot of that, and it doesn't have to show up all, at nighttime, ongoing, for years and years.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
that's good. Would you recommend, like, would you say that counseling would be a helpful option for this person or,
uh-huh.
yeah.
Yes, for sure. I think that's always a great avenue to explore. First go and check out, maybe some physiological things with your doctor and kind of, cancel that out. Um, and go and talk to someone, find a counselor, someone to just kind of talk to you about what's happening, what's going through your mind, and um, talk about just your experience in life, up to this point, what could be contributing, what's underneath there.
Yeah. That's good. Awesome. Well, thank you for that answer, Carrie. And for that question, I know it can be vulnerable to like really talk through, what you're experiencing. So I am thankful for just the vulnerability in that question. But the next question comes from this person who said, my 4-year-old nephew constantly wants to murder living things that he doesn't like, even in non-violent video games or cartoons.
Mm,
What should I do? I'm not sure if the 4-year-old nephew is being raised by this person,
okay.
um, or what that situation is. But I guess, maybe we'll just approach it from that. If this 4-year-old nephew is being raised by this person and has this kind of tendency to want to murder things that he doesn't like,
Mhm.
what would you say? Obviously, you're a mom, and you have kids of your own. So, what would you say? What are your concerns as a counselor too?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I have a 4-year-old, and their emotional kind of internal world comes out through play
Mm,
and in imagination. And they, obviously at that age don't have a lot of the language to kind of process feelings, process how they're interpreting the world outside of them. And so they do with what they have and kind of process through play. And so, I would just be curious as to what this little boy's life experience has been so far and who's been in his life. Um, I would definitely check into seeing a child therapist or a child psychologist.
yeah, I feel
Um,
like that's not talked about very much. Can you talk
mhm.
a little bit about what that is? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, you know, therapists who specialize in children, they kind of know how to sit with them and kind of get into their world through these avenues of play and imagination, and in a non-threatening way, and in a really helpful way. And so that could be really good, really helpful, and bring some insight and understanding and direction into what is going on with this little boy and what he needs. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, child psychology and child counseling, it's definitely different because like you said, like they have a totally different language, totally different way of processing information. And it takes so much skill. I feel like to work with kids and kind of have a totally different like
mhm,
conversation with them. But I mean, how helpful that is, right? To be able to do that even from a young age for kids to have that.
mhm. Right, and this is a crucial age. I mean, 0 to 5 is a very important age. The brain is interpreting the world and developing beliefs about the world and beliefs about themselves, and determining, how they can trust others. And so it's a really crucial, important time. And if you feel concerned, then I definitely would not hesitate to just, give this little boy some resources to, yeah, to grow and be set up for success.
For sure. So opposite, side of this, say that this 4-year-old nephew isn't being raised by this person, how do you approach that with his parents, right? Like, is there a conversation that you have with them? Do you just stay out of it and not cause any problems?
Yeah. Well, that's tough because, his parents are the ones that are going to make the decisions for him. And so it's a hard place to be if they wouldn't be on the same page as you. And if you would want something different than what they would want. But, it wouldn't hurt too to just approach, just have a conversation in a collaborative, kind of non-threatening, non-accusing way, and in a helpful way, and just offer to be a resource, and just offer kind of your care for this little boy. Communicate your love and care for the little boy, and um, for his family, and approach it that way, and um, hope for the best.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that you just touched on, that it doesn't come from a place of judgment toward the little boy, toward his parents.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a place of really loving him and really wanting to see him thrive as a kid and as an adult, and really getting him to where he should be. So yeah, I love that. I think that that is a great way to approach that, with that specific situation, and others. When you
Mm-hmm.
love someone and you have to have that conversation where you're like, maybe this should be different, like things like that. But it always comes from like just a place of love and gentleness, right? Um, so I love that. Amazing. And that kind of concludes our time together. Oh my goodness, flies by every single time. But you guys, if you have enjoyed maybe even this just Q&A portion, we want to answer your questions. So if you have a question that you thought of as we were talking, or that you have in mind, go ahead and comment that or inbox that to us. It stays anonymous. We won't give out your name. Or you can message it to us at MyCounselor.Online/ask, and we will answer your questions in a future episode. We love getting to interact with you guys in this way. It's such a unique way that we get to interact without actually sitting down in like a counseling session with you. So if you have anything on your mind, on your heart that you want to ask one of our counselors, feel free to send that in. And of course, Carrie is available for counseling as well, back from maternity leave. But I'm sure still enjoying the baby snuggles when you're back at home.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. So sweet. So sweet. So I would just love, Carrie, if you could just kind of leave everyone with a word of encouragement. Maybe, going into 2021, all of the different things happening in the world right now, what's some encouragement that you want to give?
Yeah. Well, gosh, encouragement. I will say I'll take it back to relationships. A relationship with others. I believe our relationship with God is always important, but especially now when we're all kind of in this crisis mode. Really anchor yourself in your relationships, and allow yourself to just show up in your vulnerabilities. We can all kind of be there for each other, and carry each other's load, and carry each other's burden. And so I would just say, make that a priority heading into the new year. Circumstances, we don't know what they will be, but what really holds us and keeps us together are the people that are around us. So.
Beautiful. So well said. Thank you, Carrie, for just giving us some of your time and energy today, just to talk with us and enjoy all of the baby snuggles with your little one.
I will. Thank you, Tori.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next week for another episode of My Counselor Live.